9-year-old Emily Thompson was a girl full of energy and curiosity. With her long brown hair and bright eyes, she lived a relatively quiet life in Los Angeles with her parents, Sarah and David. They were very close, especially since the death of their older brother Tommy a few years ago. Emily never met Tommy in person, as he passed away when she was just 3 months old, but stories about him were always a part of her life. Emily was a healthy child and loved being outdoors. His favorite pastimes included cycling, playing with his dog, Max, and swimming. Although she was not an experienced swimmer, she enjoyed hanging out in the school pool with her friends. Her parents, however, always monitored her closely, as the loss of Tommy had made them extremely protective. Sarah and David always did their best to keep Emily safe. Ever since Tommy died in a car accident, the feeling of loss was something they dealt with every day. They transferred this protection to Emily, which, to her, sometimes seemed exaggerated. "Mom, Dad, I know how to swim. I'm not a child anymore," she often complained. Summer holidays arrived, and the family decided to visit their grandparents' country house. There was a large pool in the backyard, which Emily loved. She always played with her cousins, but her mother, Sarah, was always nearby, watching like an eagle. Emily felt like she never had a moment of freedom, but at the same time, she understood her parents' fear. That day, the sun was shining, and everyone was having fun in the pool. The adults were on the porch talking, while the children played in the water. Emily, wanting to show her independence, swam in the deepest part, a place her parents always warned her to avoid. "Emily, be careful," her father shouted from across the pool. "I'm fine, Dad," she replied, without paying much attention. It was a fun time, and she wanted to make the most of it, without the restrictions her parents always placed on her. Emily was laughing and playing when she suddenly reached for a toy that was floating near the deep edge of the pool. She stretched to reach it, but ended up losing her balance. Her legs slipped, and in a matter of seconds, she was submerged. Panic took over. She began to struggle, trying to rise to the surface, but the more she struggled, the more the water seemed to suck her under. The world around him became distorted and silent. His arms moved frantically, but the weight of the water was crushing. As Emily sank, her vision began to darken. She felt the water invade her lungs, burning her throat. The sound of his mother and father's desperate screams seemed increasingly distant. "I can't breathe," was his last conscious thought before everything went quiet. She felt a sudden calm. The despair disappeared, and instead of pain, a feeling of peace took over. Emily, confused, realized that she was no longer submerged. She was floating above the pool, watching her own body floating motionless as her cousins screamed and her parents ran toward her. "What's going on?" Emily asked herself, unable to understand how she could see everything from above. She felt light, as if nothing else mattered. The pain, the fear, everything was gone, and she was just watching. The scene below was desperate. Her father jumped into the pool to get her out, while her mother cried desperately. Emily felt a tightness in her chest. "Am I dead?" he thought, but instead of panic, a strange serenity took over. Suddenly, the view of the pool began to disappear. Emily felt like she was being pulled away, like she was floating through a tunnel. In the distance, a soft and welcoming light approached. "What is this?" she asked herself, but there was no fear, just curiosity. As she approached the light, Emily began to see images flashing through her mind, moments from her childhood, the laughs with her parents, the first day of school, and even little memories with her brother who she barely knew. It was as if he was revisiting his entire life in a matter of seconds. When she finally reached the light, Emily saw a familiar figure waiting for her. It was Tommy, his brother. He looked older, as if he had grown up in the time he had been away. "Emily," he said calmly, smiling. I was waiting for you. Tommy? Emily asked, surprised. She knew who he was, but she had never seen him like this, so real. There was a sense of familiarity and comfort in being with him. Yes, it's me, he replied, extending his hand to her. But you can't stay here, Em. I miss you so much, Emily said emotionally. Mom and Dad talk about you all the time. Tommy smiled, but his gaze was steady. They miss you too, Emily. They need you. It's not your time to be here. Emily looked at Tommy, confused. But I want to be with you, she said, her voice shaking. It's so calm here, so nice. And they're fine without me. Tommy shook his head. They're not, Em. They're not going to be okay. You need to go back. When Emily was submerged, her mind began to blank out, but the feeling of despair gave way to something entirely different. She felt a gentle tug and suddenly found herself in a dark tunnel, with a bright light in the distance. The silence was absolute, and the panic that had previously dominated her was gone. Where am I? Emily wondered, scared and confused. The tunnel seemed to go on for miles, but she felt no fear, only curiosity and a strange comfort. As he moved toward the light, he noticed his worries fading away. There was a welcoming tranquility. As she got closer to the light, Emily began to hear distant laughter, and soon realized that those voices were familiar. Your mother, your father, and another voice. One that she had never heard in person, but that she knew through the stories her parents told. When she finally emerged into the light, Emily's mouth dropped open. She was in a green field, with colorful flowers everywhere and a gentle breeze swaying the trees in the distance. In the middle of this paradisiacal setting was an older boy, around 15 years old, smiling at her. Tommy? Emily asked, her voice shaking. She recognized a brother she never met in life, but had always heard about. It was like seeing him in the photos, only now he was there, in the flesh, smiling in a peaceful way, as if he had been waiting for her for a long time. Hi, Emily, he said calmly, as if time didn't exist. I knew that one day we would meet, but not now. He stepped forward, extending his hand to her. You can't stay here with me, Em. Emily felt a mix of emotions upon seeing her brother for the first time. She felt like she was finally complete, like that absence in her life was filled. I didn't know I would feel this way, she said, tears in her eyes. Why can't I be with you? Tommy shook his head gently, his expression still calm but with a hint of urgency. Because you have your whole life ahead of you, Em. Mom and Dad need you. They're not ready to lose another child. But they always talk about you, Emily replied, her voice shaking. They miss you so much. Sometimes I feel like I'm not enough, that you are the one they really wanted. The words came out with difficulty, and Tommy looked at her with empathy. That's not true, he said, his voice firm but full of tenderness. They love you, Emily. They always have. I'll always be there for them, but you're the one they need right now. Tommy moved closer and placed his hand on her shoulder, and Emily felt a rush of warmth and love that she had never experienced before. You have so much to live for, Tommy continued. I've been watching you grow, and I know how much they count on you. It's not about replacing anyone, it's about moving forward, and they can only do that with you by their side. Emily looked at Tommy, trying to process what he was saying. I don't know if I can, he said softly. But Tommy smiled encouragingly. You're already doing that, Em. And you'll continue, but this isn't where you belong. Not yet. Emily felt the conflict within her grow. Staying with Tommy seemed like the right choice at that moment. He was there, finally present in her life, and the place they were in was one of indescribable peace. Everything about her wanted to stay, but at the same time, something deeper was pulling her back. What if I come back and I can't be what they need? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if I disappoint everyone? Tommy looked at her with compassion. You won't let anyone down. The only way you can fail is if you don't try. And, Emily, you are strong. Much more than you think. As they spoke, Emily began to hear, far away, her mother's voice, calling her name desperately. Emily! Please come back to me! The voice was faint, as if it were very far away, but Emily recognized the sound of suffering. They're calling you, Tommy said, pointing in a direction where the light was beginning to dissipate. You need to go back. They need you now more than ever. Emily looked at her brother, and then at the light, her heart torn between two impossible choices. She approached Tommy and hugged him tightly. I wanted to meet you so much, Emily said, tears streaming down her face. I wish you were there with me. Tommy held her close and replied, I'm with you, Em. I always have been. And I'll always be there, even if you don't see me. Now go. Life still awaits you. Reluctant but determined, Emily began to pull away, feeling a new strength emerging within her. The way back was opening up before her eyes, and as she took her first steps, the light around her began to fade. The last thing he saw was Tommy's encouraging smile before everything went dark. Suddenly, Emily felt a shock of pain and cold invade her body. Her vision was blurred, and the soft light that surrounded her was replaced by screams, water, and chaos. She was back at the poolside, coughing violently as her father held her, shaking with panic. Emily! Emily! Her mother screamed, crying with relief, as she threw herself down next to her. You're back! My God, you're back! Emily tried to take deep breaths, her lungs burning with each inhale, but she knew she was alive. He had managed to return. Paramedics soon arrived, checking her vitals and ensuring she was stable. But what resonated most in Emily's mind was not the voices of the rescuers or the sound of the distant siren, but Tommy's last words, life still awaits you. As she was placed on the stretcher to be taken to the hospital, Emily looked at her parents, seeing the fear and relief in their eyes. They had been so worried, so scared about the possibility of losing her, and now she understood why. They had already lost a child, and the idea of reliving that pain was unbearable for them. I'm fine, Mom, Emily said in a weak but firm voice. I am here. His mother held his hand tightly, unable to speak. The tears continued to stream down her face, but she was finally able to breathe a little easier. Emily knew something profound had changed. She was back, but the experience she had with Tommy was real, and it would stay with her forever. Now, more than ever, she understood the value of life and what she still had to live. During the days of recovery, while in the hospital, Emily constantly reflected on what she had experienced. The meeting with Tommy didn't seem like a dream. It was real as the floor she was lying on. She began to tell her mother about what she had seen, about the tunnel, the field, and finally Tommy. I saw him, Mother, she said, her eyes fixed on her mother's. He was there. He told me you guys still needed me. Sarah was shocked, but at the same time, moved. Have you seen Tommy? Yes, Emily replied with a slight smile. He told me that I had to come back. That you needed me. And that he would always be with us. Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she held Emily's hand. I always knew he was close by, Sarah whispered emotionally. Emily's return brought a new wave of gratitude and change in the family. David, her father, was also deeply touched by his daughter's story. They knew the experience had changed Emily irrevocably. Now, every day was more meaningful. Emily began to see the world with different eyes. She understood the value of life in a way that many adults never would. There was a depth to her, a connection to something greater that would stay with her for the rest of her life. The experience not only brought Emily back to life, but also brought the family closer together. They had lost Tommy years before, but now, with the knowledge that he was still there in some way, the pain of his absence was easier to bear. A few weeks after the accident and near-death experience, Emily began having strange, vivid dreams. In all of them, she saw her brother Tommy, like in that peaceful field in her NDE. He never spoke directly to her in her dreams, but he was always present, watching her from afar, like a silent guardian. "Mommy, I'm dreaming about Tommy almost every night," Emily said one morning as they were eating breakfast. Her mother looked at her, surprised but with an expression of curiosity. "Dreams could be his way of trying to communicate with you," Sarah replied, ever willing to believe in spirituality after Emily's near-death experience. These dreams were different from the ones Emily had ever had before. They felt more real, like Tommy was trying to show him something. "He never talks to me," Emily told her father one night. "But it feels like he's trying to tell me something important, but I just can't understand it." Emily's parents began to worry a little, not about the dreams themselves, but about the fact that every time she had them, she seemed more introspective, almost distant. "Do you think these dreams mean anything?" David asked his wife. "I don't know, but it looks like Tommy is trying to tell us something through her," Sarah replied uneasily. At school, Emily also began to become quieter and more thoughtful. Her friends noticed the change, but she didn't know how to explain what was happening. Everything in her life seemed to have taken on a new layer of depth since the accident, and she felt like she was carrying a secret that no one would understand. Even so, Emily maintained her studies and tried to act normally. But at night, when the dreams came back, she knew something more was coming. Something that would change everything again. On a particularly restless night, Emily had a dream that was much more intense than the others. She was in that lush green field again, but this time, in the distance, there was a huge storm brewing. The dark clouds moved quickly, and the wind began to blow strongly, stirring the flowers around them. Tommy was there, as always, but this time his expression was serious, almost worried. He gestured to Emily, pointing to the storm on the horizon. "What is this?" Emily tried to scream, but her voice wouldn't come out. Fear began to grow inside her. Suddenly, Emily heard the distant sound of sirens and felt a crushing pressure in her chest. The storm in the dream seemed to come to life, as if it was about to swallow everything around it. She tried to run to Tommy, but the more she tried, the further away he became. Emily woke up with a start, her heart racing. He could still hear the sirens in his head, and the sense of urgency didn't disappear when he woke up. "Mommy, I had a horrible nightmare," she said the next morning. It was like something really bad was about to happen. Sarah, worried, asked more about the dream, but Emily couldn't fully explain it. It was a storm, and Tommy seemed worried. "I think he was trying to warn me about something," she said, shuddering as she remembered the details. Sarah decided to take Emily to a therapist to help her process these dreams and the near-death experience. However, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was really about to happen, something big and unexpected. 2 weeks after the storm dream, something terrible happened. Sarah and David were taking Emily to visit her grandparents in a neighboring town. The weather was bad, and a storm was about to hit the city. As they drove down the road, the rain began to fall heavily, and soon the car was surrounded by a heavy fog. Traffic was slow, but visibility was almost zero. David gripped the steering wheel, trying to maintain control. "We're almost there, just a few more minutes," he said, trying to reassure the family. Suddenly, a loud, screeching sound invaded the car. Sirens. Emily's heart raced when she heard the same sound that appeared in her dreams. "Dad! Stop the car!" Emily shouted, but it was too late. A truck, which was coming in the opposite direction, lost control and advanced on their car. The impact was devastating. The car rolled down the road, and Emily felt like she was being thrown around. His mother's screams mixed with the sound of metal being crushed. For a moment, everything was silent, and Emily fainted. When she opened her eyes, she was trapped in the back seat, her head hurting and her body drenched in blood. Paramedics were already at the scene, trying to open the car door to get her out. She saw her mother unconscious beside her and her father injured but awake. "Emily! Stay with me," he shouted, his voice broken. The chaos of the accident was eerily familiar, as if she were living the nightmare Tommy had tried to warn her about. He knew. Emily thought, as the paramedics carried her to the ambulance. As she was carried on a stretcher to the ambulance, Emily began to feel the same detachment she had experienced during the drowning. His vision became blurry, and the pain slowly began to fade. She knew what was happening. Not again, he thought, as his mind began to separate from his body. Suddenly, she was floating above the scene of the accident, watching paramedics work to save her mother and manage her father's injuries. Despair took over her, and she wanted to scream, but once again, she couldn't communicate with the physical world. It was then that she saw the familiar figure in the distance. Tommy was there again, standing in the middle of the confusion. This time, he was not in a lush green field, but in the middle of the road, as if he was trying to protect her and her family. "You need to go back," he said, more firmly than ever. "They're going to need you now more than ever. This isn't over." Emily felt the urgency in her brother's voice, but also a deep weight. She knew the accident was the start of something much bigger. "What's going to happen? Why is this happening to me?" Emily tried to ask, but Tommy just shook his head. "You're here for a reason, Em. The same reason you came back the first time. Now it's your turn to protect them." Emily looked at the chaos around her and knew he was right. Her family was in danger, and she was the only one who could do something. With renewed determination, she began to return to her body, feeling the pain and heaviness return. Emily woke up in the hospital, to the sound of machines beeping around her. Her body ached, and her mind was heavy, but she was alive. When he looked to the side, he saw his father, bandaged and with some bruises, sitting next to his bed. "You're okay, my love," he said, with tears in his eyes. "What about Mom?" Emily asked, her voice weak. Her father hesitated for a moment, and then replied, "She's in surgery, but she'll be fine. The doctors said it was serious, but she's strong." Relief washed over Emily, but the weight of responsibility was still there. Over the next few days, Emily slowly recovered. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Tommy, as if he was guiding her down a path she didn't yet fully understand. But now she knew there was a greater purpose in her life. As her mother recovered from surgery, Emily began to have a feeling that something was about to happen. Something big. She realized that after the accident, her connection with Tommy had intensified, and her dreams were more vivid and full of meaning. One night, while resting in her hospital bed, Tommy appeared to her again. "You know what you need to do, Emily," he said, his voice echoing in her mind. "You're here for a reason. Take care of them. And when the time is right, you'll understand." Emily, now stronger and more determined, knew there was a mission she still didn't fully understand, but she was ready to follow the path Tommy was leading her on. Something bigger was coming. As Emily recovered, her nights became a mix of restless sleep and deep dreams. The connection with Tommy seemed to intensify every day, as if he was there for her, offering strength and comfort. One peaceful night, she had an especially vivid dream where she saw her mother and father together, smiling and happy, with Tommy in the background, looking at them with pride. When Sarah finally left the hospital and returned home with David, the family was scarred by the experience, but also strengthened. Emily felt responsible for her new mission, even if she didn't yet know exactly what it was. She felt a deep determination in her heart, a desire to make a difference, guided by her brother's constant presence. Sarah and David noticed the change in Emily. She seemed more mature and focused, as if she carried a greater weight on her small shoulders. The way she cared for her parents, the way she offered comfort and support, showed that the experience had transformed her in profound ways. Emily was becoming a pillar of strength for her family, even at her young age. A month after the accident, Emily began getting involved in activities that helped other children and families who were going through similar difficulties. She found solace and purpose in her volunteer work, feeling like she was fulfilling the mission Tommy had envisioned. She visited hospitals and helped organize events to raise funds and support families affected by tragedies. Although the pain of losing Tommy never completely went away, Emily learned to deal with it in a new way. She found strength in her renewed faith and her connection with her brother. With every step she took, she knew she was following the path that Tommy had illuminated for her, and that certainty gave her the courage to face the challenges ahead. As Emily continued to help others, she realized she had a special passion for supporting children who had gone through traumatic experiences. She signed up for volunteer programs and began sharing her story, inspiring many with her courage and resilience. Her parents, proud of their daughter, supported her on her journey. Together, they began participating in community events, further strengthening family ties and finding a new way to honor Tommy's memory. On one of these occasions, Emily met Lucas, a boy who had lost his sister in an accident. Seeing the pain in his eyes, Emily felt an immediate connection and decided to help him find peace, just as she had. By sharing their experiences, Emily and Lucas created a deep friendship. Together, they discovered that despite the pain, it was possible to find joy again and that, by supporting each other, they could overcome challenges. Through these interactions, Emily understood that her purpose was greater than she realized. She was not only helping her family, but also making a difference in the lives of others who needed hope and comfort. As she became more involved in volunteer work, Emily faced challenges. Some people didn't understand how such a young girl could understand such deep pain, and this sometimes discouraged her. In moments of doubt, Emily dreamed of Tommy. In the dream, he encouraged her to keep going, reminding her that her strength came not only from her experiences, but also from the love she shared with others. Reinvigorated, Emily decided not to let the criticism get her down. He began studying more about emotional support and child psychology, wanting to train himself to help even more effectively. Their efforts did not go unnoticed. The local community recognized her dedication, and Emily was invited to speak at events in schools, sharing her story and inspiring other young people. With each challenge overcome, Emily grew in confidence and ability, realizing that her experiences prepared her to make a difference in the world. Years passed, and Emily, now a teenager, decided to found a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting children and families facing loss and trauma. With the support of parents and the community, the project came to life. The organization offered counseling services, support groups, and therapeutic activities, becoming a beacon of hope for many. Emily led with passion, using her own experiences to guide her actions. At the dedication ceremony, she spoke about the importance of finding purpose in pain and how her personal journey led her there. Her parents, thrilled, realized how much Emily had grown and the positive impact she had. Emily's story gained prominence in the media, inspiring people in other cities and countries. His initiative was replicated in several places, expanding the reach of his work. Emily felt like she was finally accomplishing the mission Tommy had entrusted to her. He had turned pain into purpose, and his brother remained his constant inspiration. The organization prospered, touching many lives. Families found comfort and support, and children learned to deal with their feelings in healthy ways. At a celebratory event, Sarah and David were honored for raising such an exceptional daughter. They reflected on the family's journey, from Tommy's loss to Emily's achievements, feeling deep gratitude for everything they overcame together. Seeing her proud parents, Emily felt a deep sense of accomplishment. "I knew Tommy would be proud too, and that his legacy would live on through the work he did." Determined to expand her reach, Emily began writing a book about her experience, sharing insights and offering hope to those facing similar situations. The book became a success. Emily began traveling, giving talks and connecting with people from different parts of the world. Her impact was undeniable, and she knew she was making a difference. On a peaceful night, Emily looked up at the starry sky, feeling the gentle breeze touch her face. He smiled, feeling Tommy's presence at his side. "Thank you for guiding me," she whispered, at peace with herself. Her journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came. With her family by her side and Tommy's memory in her heart, Emily knew she could face any challenge. Life has shown him that, even in the most difficult situations, it is possible to find strength and purpose. By helping others, she also found healing for herself. Emily would continue to dedicate her life to bringing hope and comfort, honoring the legacy of love her brother had left her. "I knew that, together, they could make a difference in the world." And so, Emily's story was not just about overcoming pain, but about transforming lives through courage, compassion, and determination. His journey would inspire many, proving that even in the face of the greatest adversity, it is possible to find light and move forward. Over the years, Emily continued to expand her organization, reaching people in different parts of the world. His passion and dedication inspired many to join his cause, creating a global network of support for children and families in vulnerable situations. In recognition of her work, Emily has received numerous honors and awards. She was invited to speak at international conferences, sharing her story and encouraging others to transform pain into purpose. During one of these conferences, he met Anna, a young activist who also worked with children affected by trauma. Together, they decided to collaborate on projects that combined art and therapy, providing new forms of expression and healing for young people. The partnership yielded significant results. They implemented programs in schools and communities, using music, painting, and writing as tools for transformation. The impact was profound, helping many overcome difficulties and find hope. Emily felt like she was on the right path. Every smile recovered, every life touched, reinforced the certainty that his mission was valuable. And with every step, she felt Tommy's presence, guiding her and celebrating her achievements. Years later, Emily wrote a book detailing her journey, from her near-death experience to her humanitarian work. The book became a bestseller, touching the hearts of thousands of readers around the world. Emily's story was adapted into a film, further amplifying the reach of her message. People of all ages found inspiration in his journey of overcoming and altruism. In an interview, when asked what motivated her tireless work, Emily responded, "I learned that even in the darkest moments, we can find light. That light is not just for us, but to light the path of others. If my story can help someone find hope, then every effort is worth it." Her organization continued to grow, and Emily began training new leaders, ensuring that the mission would endure beyond her own role. She believed in collective strength and the ability of people to bring about significant change when united by a common purpose. Surrounded by family, friends, and everyone who was impacted by her work, Emily saw her legacy solidify. The message that began with an encounter beyond this world now spanned generations, proving that love and courage can transform lives and build a better future for all.